The greatest dreams are often born in the quiet corners of the heart, where possibility whispers and imagination paints pictures of a life that could be. Yet too often, those dreams remain locked away, hidden behind walls built from fear and doubt. Fear has a way of convincing the mind that the risks are too high, that the road ahead is too uncertain, and that failure is a destination rather than a stepping stone. But fear is not the truth. It is only a shadow that loses its power the moment you choose to step into the light. To dream without fear is to give yourself permission to explore the depths of your potential without the constant weight of "what if" holding you back. It is the decision to let your desires speak louder than your doubts. Living without limits is not about recklessness or denying reality. It is about refusing to place artificial boundaries on what you can achieve. It is the belief that growth is infinite, that there is always another mountain to climb, another skill to learn, another goal to chase. The limits that most people face are not set by the world, but by the stories they tell themselves. When those stories change, when they are replaced with ones filled with courage and determination, entire lives are transformed. The mind, when freed from fear, becomes a powerful engine of creation. Suddenly, paths appear where before there were only dead ends, and opportunities arise where once there were only obstacles. Every step taken without fear becomes a step into a greater version of yourself. Challenges will come, as they always do, but they no longer have the power to stop progress. Instead, they become training grounds, shaping resilience, sharpening skill, and building a spirit unshakable by circumstances. Living without limits means embracing those challenges, not as burdens, but as gateways to strength. It means realizing that the obstacles in your way are often the very things that prepare you for the success you seek. To dream without fear is to believe in the impossible until it becomes inevitable. It requires courage, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. Fear may knock on the door, but you choose not to let it take a seat. Living without limits is waking up every day with the knowledge that your story is still being written and the pen is in your hands. It is the conscious choice to expand your horizons, to break free from routines that keep you small, and to pursue goals that stretch you beyond your comfort zone. The world has always been shaped by those who dared to dream beyond what was known, by those who refused to accept the boundaries handed to them. Every great achievement in history began with someone who refused to be contained by fear and limits. That same potential exists within you. It is not reserved for the few. It is available to anyone willing to believe that they are capable of more and willing to act on that belief. The truth is, living without limits does not mean you will never stumble or fail. In fact, failure will likely be a frequent companion on your journey. But when fear is no longer in control, failure becomes nothing more than feedback, a guide that points the way forward. Each misstep becomes a lesson, and each lesson a stepping stone toward the life you envision. The limits you once thought were unbreakable begin to dissolve, replaced by new heights you never imagined you could reach. Dreaming without fear and living without limits is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. It is choosing every day to silence the voice that says, "You can't," and to listen instead to the one that says, "Try again." It is waking up ready to move forward, even when the path ahead is unclear. It is understanding that your greatest victories lie just beyond the point, where most people choose to stop. One day, the dream you once thought was too big will be the reality you are living. You will look back and see that the walls that once seemed so high were only as strong as the fear that built them. You will see that life was never about avoiding risk or staying comfortable. It was about stepping boldly into the unknown and discovering just how far you could go. That is the essence of dreaming without fear and living without limits. To embrace life fully, to chase the extraordinary, and to never let the boundaries of yesterday define the possibilities of tomorrow. Fear is only a shadow, an illusion that grows larger the longer it is allowed to loom over the mind. It has no real substance, no physical weight, and yet it can feel heavier than the heaviest stone when carried within the heart. It whispers doubt, paints false pictures of failure, and convinces the mind that danger is always closer than it is. But a shadow cannot harm you. It exists only because something stands in the way of the light. When you step toward that light, when you decide to confront what fear has been hiding behind, the shadow begins to fade, revealing nothing but open space where you once thought there was an unmovable wall. Fear feeds on hesitation. The longer you wait, the more powerful it appears, not because it grows stronger, but because your mind keeps giving it shape, form, and presence. It thrives in inaction and quiet surrender. But the moment you decide to take even the smallest step forward, its edges blur, its size shrinks, and its hold over you weakens. Many times, fear exists not because of reality, but because of imagination gone astray. It is the projection of every possible negative outcome, magnified and played on repeat until it feels certain. Yet when you pause and truly examine those thoughts, most have no evidence to support them. The human mind has the incredible power to create visions of greatness, but that same power can be twisted to create visions of doom. It is your choice which visions to nurture. Fear wants you to believe it is protecting you, warning you of dangers you cannot see. But more often, it is protecting you from growth, from risk, from living fully. It disguises comfort zones as safe havens, yet they are cages that slowly shrink until they suffocate dreams. Stepping into the unknown will always carry uncertainty, but uncertainty is not the same as danger. Just because the path ahead is unfamiliar does not mean it is unsafe. In fact, most of life's greatest moments are born in places where certainty was absent. The first time you try something new, speak up for yourself, or pursue a vision that others might doubt, fear will be there, whispering that you might fail, that you might be embarrassed, that you might lose. But it rarely tells you the other side of the story, the possibility that you might succeed, that you might inspire, that you might win more than you could ever imagine. Fear only shows half the picture, courage completes it. The truth is, fear's strength is borrowed. It borrows it from your belief in it. If you stop giving it attention, if you refuse to rehearse its warnings in your mind, it loses its grip. Facing fear does not mean you will suddenly feel brave every moment. It means you will act regardless of how you feel, trusting that action itself is the path to confidence. The more you act in spite of fear, the less influence it holds over your decisions. Eventually, you come to realize that most of what you once feared never even happened. And even when some fears did materialize, you had more strength to handle them than you thought. Think of fear as a shadow at sunset. When the sun is low, shadows are long and dark, stretching far beyond the object that cast them. But as the sun rises, those same shadows shorten and eventually vanish in the brightness of day. In life, the sun is your courage, your decision to take a step, your willingness to move toward the thing you have been avoiding. The higher your courage rises, the smaller fear becomes. Avoidance only prolongs the night, but action brings the dawn. It is also important to understand that fear is not the enemy. It is a signal. It signals that something matters deeply to you, that the stakes feel high. Instead of running from it, you can use it as a compass, pointing toward the very experiences that will help you grow. If something scares you because it challenges you, it may be exactly what you need to pursue. Life is not about eliminating fear completely. It is about mastering the ability to move with it, to carry it without letting it weigh you down. When you look back years from now, you will not remember the moments when you stayed safe within the limits fear set for you. You will remember the leaps you took despite trembling hands and a racing heart. You will remember how alive you felt when you stepped beyond what was familiar, when you proved to yourself that the shadow was nothing more than empty air. Every victory over fear leaves a mark on your character, shaping you into someone who trusts their own resilience. Fear can exist only in the mind, but courage exists in the heart and is proven through action. Once you learn to see fear for what it truly is, a shadow, you stop letting it dictate the course of your life. You stop waiting for it to disappear before you act, and instead you act and watch as it fades behind you. The shadow may always appear from time to time, But now you know the truth. It cannot touch you unless you let it. And when you no longer give it permission, you are free to move, free to dream, and free to live without the weight of imagined chains. Limits are often self-imposed, crafted not by the world around, but by the thoughts we allow to take root in our minds. Many times, the boundaries we feel pressing in on us are not physical walls, but invisible lines drawn by doubt, fear, and the belief that we are not capable enough. These limits can disguise themselves as practical reasoning, as safe choices, or as the voice of logic urging caution. Yet, when examined closely, they are often just assumptions we have accepted without question. The truth is, the mind can be both a cage and a key. The beliefs we choose to accept can lock us into a narrow life, but the ones we challenge can unlock doors we never even knew existed. Every great achievement in history began with someone refusing to accept the limits placed before them. These individuals understood that the rules of possibility are not set in stone. They are rewritten every time a person dares to push further. But for that to happen, the first step is realizing that so many limits are illusions. We grow up hearing what can and cannot be done, what is too risky, too hard, or too ambitious. Over time, these warnings, whether spoken with good intentions or born of other people's fears, become the walls of our own mental prison. We stop questioning them, and as a result, we stop exploring what might happen if we dare to step beyond them. The power to change your life begins with the decision to test those walls. Sometimes you find they are nothing more than paper, thin barriers that crumble at the first touch. The challenge lies in recognizing them for what they are. One of the ways to break these limits is to replace the question, "Can I?" with "How can I?" The first question invites doubt and hesitation. The second demands creativity and action. The moment you start asking, "How can I?" you shift your mind from a passive state to an active one. You begin to look for solutions, and in doing so, you realize that most of the limits you face are negotiable, movable, or entirely imagined. Self-imposed limits often come from a fear of failure or judgment. We hold back because we don't want to face the discomfort of falling short or being misunderstood. But if you look closely, these fears are rooted in the need for approval, not in the reality of what might actually happen. The world is far less concerned with our failures than we think. It is we who magnify them in our own minds. Once you stop living for the acceptance of others and start living for the truth of what you want to create, those limits start to fade. Another reason people impose limits on themselves is a lack of belief in their own capacity to grow. They assume that who they are now is the final version of themselves. But growth is the natural state of a human being. Every skill can be learned, every weakness can be improved, every fear can be lessened with exposure and practice. The belief that you must already be perfect before you attempt something new is one of the most destructive limits you can place on yourself. Perfection is not the starting line. It is a myth that keeps you from even beginning. Breaking self-imposed limits also requires accepting discomfort as part of the process. Growth never happens entirely within the boundaries of what is comfortable. When you step outside your comfort zone, you are telling yourself, "I am willing to feel the fear, the uncertainty, and the awkwardness because I know what I am reaching for is worth it." This willingness is the birthplace of transformation. The moment you embrace discomfort as a sign of progress rather than a signal to stop, your limits start to expand. There is also a subtle danger in only attempting what you already know you can do. That path may feel safe, but it guarantees that you will never discover your true potential. Real growth happens when you set goals that make you question your current abilities, forcing you to become more than you are today. If your dreams fit neatly within the life you already have, they may not be big enough. The limits you set are often just the borders of your current vision. Expand the vision, and the borders will shift. Sometimes, breaking through self-imposed limits is not about massive leaps, but small, consistent steps. Every time you choose to push a little further than you did yesterday, you are telling yourself that you are capable of more. These moments accumulate, and over time, they redefine what you see as possible. Even if your progress feels slow, it is still progress, and every step chips away at the mental barriers that once felt unshakable. It is also important to remember that self-imposed limits can return if you stop challenging them. The mind has a way of falling back into old patterns, especially in moments of doubt or difficulty. That is why breaking limits is not a one-time act, but a continual process. Each new challenge presents an opportunity to choose between shrinking back into what is familiar or expanding into what is possible. In the end, limits only have as much power as you give them. The ones created by your mind can be dismantled by your mind as well. When you choose to see limits not as final verdicts, but as starting points for exploration, you give yourself permission to live a bigger, bolder life. You begin to realize that you were never truly trapped. The door was always open. You just had to be willing to walk through it. If you dare to believe that the boundaries you see are not the edge of your capabilities, but simply the edge of what you have tried, then life becomes a canvas without borders. And in that space, you can dream without restriction, act without hesitation, and live without the invisible chains you once thought were unbreakable. Challenges are training grounds that shape the mind, body, and spirit into something far stronger than they once were. They are not punishments or signs that life is working against you. They are invitations to grow, to rise, and to prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you ever imagined. Every difficulty faced is a test of endurance and a lesson in resilience. When life presents a challenge, it is rarely comfortable and often comes wrapped in uncertainty, discomfort, and doubt. But it is in these very moments that the foundation of true strength is built. A challenge forces adaptation. It demands that you stretch beyond the familiar, think in new ways, and summon parts of yourself you may have never tapped into before. Just like muscles grow stronger through resistance, the spirit becomes more resilient when it is tested. Without challenge, there can be no true development. Comfort zones are safe but stagnant. They may protect you from failure, but they also shield you from growth. When a challenge appears, it strips away the illusions and shows you exactly where you stand. It reveals both your strengths and the areas where you still need to improve. It can be humbling, sometimes even painful, but it is always transformative for those willing to endure the process. The greatest achievements often follow the greatest struggles. Mountains are not climbed in a single step, and victories are not handed out freely. They are earned through persistence, through countless attempts, and through a refusal to be broken by setbacks. Each challenge you overcome adds another layer to your character, another story of perseverance to your journey. It teaches patience when results take time, focus when distractions tempt you, and determination when quitting seems like the easier choice. It's easy to view challenges as burdens, but those who succeed know they are opportunities in disguise. They force you to sharpen your skills, refine your strategies, and strengthen your mindset. They teach you to adapt quickly, to think creatively, and to embrace problem solving as a way of life. When you face something that seems impossible and work through it anyway, you discover the depth of your own capability. You realize that your limits were not where you thought they were, and that your potential stretches far beyond what you once believed. Every challenge, no matter how big or small, prepares you for the next one. Life is not about avoiding difficulty. It is about developing the tools to face it head on. In this way, challenges are like stepping stones across a river. Each one takes you further, builds your balance, and makes you more confident in your ability to keep moving forward. You may stumble, you may slip, but each attempt strengthens you for the next step. This is why some of the strongest and most inspiring people are those who have faced and overcome the hardest obstacles. They understand that struggle shapes the soul. When you see a challenge ahead, don't run from it. Instead, lean into it with the mindset of a warrior who knows that every battle fought is one more victory for personal growth. The pain you endure today will become the power you draw from tomorrow. What once felt impossible will later become second nature, because you took the time to wrestle with the difficulty and learn its lessons. And when the next challenge comes, you will be ready. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because you became stronger. In the end, challenges are not there to stop you, but to prepare you. They are the sharpening stones for your skills, the testing grounds for your resilience, and the classrooms where wisdom is taught. Embrace them with patience, face them with courage, and use them to forge yourself into someone capable of living without limits. Every challenge you meet and overcome is proof that you are not defined by your circumstances, but by your will to rise above them. Courage is acting despite fear, moving forward when every instinct tells you to retreat, and choosing action over paralysis, even when the outcome is uncertain. Fear is a natural human response, an internal signal designed to keep us safe from harm. But while it can protect us in moments of real danger, it can also become a barrier that keeps us from stepping into the fullness of our potential. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the mastery of it. It is feeling the tightness in your chest, the rapid beat of your heart, the voice of doubt whispering that you can't, and still taking that first step anyway. It's about trusting that you have the strength to face whatever lies ahead, even when the path is unclear. True courage often begins quietly. It might be a small decision to try something new, to speak up when it would be easier to stay silent, or to stand firm when others question your choices. These moments might seem insignificant, but they plant seeds of self-belief that grow over time. Every act of courage, no matter how small, builds a foundation for greater acts in the future. Each time you choose to act despite fear, you prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you thought. This growing confidence becomes a shield you can carry into bigger challenges. Courage is also deeply personal. What terrifies one person might not faze another. For some, it's starting over after a major loss. For others, it's speaking honestly about their dreams. Courage might be walking away from something comfortable to pursue something uncertain. It can be refusing to conform to the expectations of others or standing your ground in the face of criticism. The common thread is that courage demands vulnerability. It asks you to risk failure, judgment, or disappointment in the pursuit of something greater. Without that willingness to be vulnerable, growth becomes impossible. Acting despite fear often requires rethinking the way you see it. Fear is not necessarily an enemy. It can be a sign that you are standing on the edge of growth. The same feelings that arise when you are about to fail are also present when you are about to succeed. Both involve risk. Both require stepping into the unknown. Courage is the choice to see fear as a signal to pay attention rather than a command to stop. It is learning to walk alongside fear instead of letting it lead you. One of the most empowering realizations you can have is that courage is a skill, not an inborn trait. Like any skill, it can be strengthened through practice. You don't have to leap into massive acts of bravery right away. You can start small, having the difficult conversation, trying a new skill, taking that first step toward a goal you've been avoiding. Each success, no matter how minor, rewires your brain to associate action with strength rather than hesitation. Over time, the fears that once held you back will begin to lose their power. Courage also thrives in moments of uncertainty. The truth is, there will never be a perfect time when every condition is in your favor. Waiting until you feel ready often means waiting forever. Courage teaches you that readiness is a byproduct of action, not a prerequisite for it. You become ready by moving forward, by facing the discomfort head on and learning through experience. The boldest decisions are rarely made in the comfort of certainty. They are made when you take a leap of faith, trusting in your ability to adapt along the way. It's important to remember that courage doesn't guarantee success. You might act boldly and still face failure. But even in those moments, courage wins because it prevents regret. It allows you to look back and know that you tried, that you stood up for what mattered, that you lived in alignment with your values, rather than letting fear dictate your path. Failure becomes a teacher rather than a chain, and each lesson prepares you for the next opportunity. Courage is contagious. When others see you act despite fear, it inspires them to do the same. Your willingness to take risks gives them permission to challenge their own limitations. In this way, acts of courage can ripple outward, creating change not just in your own life, but in the lives of those around you. This is why leaders, innovators, and visionaries are often remembered not because they had no fear, but because they moved forward in spite of it. Ultimately, courage is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Fear will always be a companion on the journey, but it does not have to be the driver. By choosing action in the presence of fear, you take control of your own story. You decide that your dreams, your growth, and your values are worth the risk. And in the process, you prove to yourself and the world that courage is not about waiting for fear to fade, but about walking forward with it at your side, knowing that what lies ahead is worth every step. Failure is feedback, not defeat. It's easy to see failure as the end of the road, as a sign that you aren't capable, worthy, or destined to succeed. But in reality, failure is one of the most valuable teachers you will ever have. It provides raw, unfiltered information about what works and what doesn't, where you need to improve, and about the hidden strengths you might not have known you possessed. When you shift your perspective to see failure as feedback, it transforms from a crushing weight into a tool for growth. Every setback holds a lesson, but those lessons are often hidden behind the emotions failure stirs up: frustration, disappointment, embarrassment, or even shame. The key is to move past those initial feelings and dig into what the failure is trying to tell you. Maybe you didn't prepare enough. Maybe you misjudged the situation. Maybe you were aiming for something that requires more time or skill. Whatever the reason, failure gives you a mirror to see your reality more clearly. It strips away illusions and reveals the truth, not to humiliate you, but to guide you toward the right adjustments. In fact, many of the most successful people in history have built their achievements on a foundation of failures. Thomas Edison famously said he didn't fail 1,000 times while inventing the light bulb. He simply found 1,000 ways that didn't work. That's the mindset that turns failure into fuel. Instead of quitting after a setback, you examine it like a scientist, breaking it apart, learning from it, and applying those lessons to your next attempt. Each so-called failure becomes a stepping stone, a critical part of the journey rather than a barrier to it. Failure also forces you to confront your limits, and in doing so, it stretches them. When something doesn't go the way you planned, you're pushed out of your comfort zone to adapt, to think creatively, and to solve in ways you might never have tried otherwise. This process builds resilience, a mental and emotional toughness that no amount of easy wins could ever give you. Over time, the sting of failure lessens because you've proven to yourself that you can survive it, learn from it, and come back stronger. One of the biggest traps people fall into is believing that failure defines them. They internalize a single setback as proof that they are not good enough. But failure is an event, not an identity. It is something that happens to you, not something you are. If you treat it as a verdict, you close yourself off to future possibilities. If you treat it as feedback, you keep the door open to growth, change, and eventual success. The difference between people who reach their goals and those who give up often comes down to how they interpret failure. It's also worth noting that failure can refine your goals. Sometimes, what feels like failure is actually redirection. A closed door might push you toward an even better opportunity you hadn't considered before. By paying attention to the feedback failure provides, you can adjust your path to align more closely with your strengths, passions, and values. In this way, failure not only improves your approach, it can improve your aim. The fear of failure is often more paralyzing than failure itself. Many people avoid taking risks because they're afraid of what will happen if they don't succeed. But if you can learn to see failure as part of the process, that fear begins to fade. You realize that failure isn't a permanent scar. It's a temporary experience that leaves you wiser than before. The only true defeat comes from refusing to try at all. Failure also teaches humility. Success can sometimes make us overconfident, leading us to believe we have all the answers. Failure reminds us that there is always more to learn, always more room to grow. It keeps us grounded and hungry for improvement. This humility is a powerful asset. It allows you to seek advice, collaborate with others, and stay open to new perspectives. In relationships, careers, and personal goals, failure can strengthen your connection to others. When you share your setbacks openly, you create space for authenticity. People are drawn to honesty and vulnerability, and they often respect those who can admit mistakes and keep going. In this way, your failures can inspire others, showing them that it's possible to recover and thrive even after things go wrong. Ultimately, failure is a feedback loop. You try, you fail, you learn, you try again, each cycle bringing you closer to mastery. The process is rarely linear. You may take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but as long as you keep moving, you are progressing. With each attempt, you refine your skills, sharpen your strategies, and strengthen your mindset. Defeat only happens when you stop trying. Until then, every failure is simply part of your education. The lessons you learn from failure are often the ones that stick with you the longest, because they're etched into your experience in a way that success alone can't replicate. And when you finally achieve your goal, the victory will feel richer, because you know how much you've endured and learned along the way. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is a part of success. The sooner you embrace it as feedback, the sooner you free yourself from the fear that keeps you from taking bold action. You stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What will I learn if I do?" And that question changes everything. Your story is still being written, and every day you wake up, you are handed a blank page. The pen rests in your hand, and no one else has the authority to take it away unless you let them. It doesn't matter what the previous chapters contain, whether they are filled with pain, mistakes, or moments you wish you could erase, because the beauty of life is that your future is not bound by your past. Too often, people look back at the earlier parts of their story and believe that those pages define the ending. But in reality, the power of your narrative lies in what you choose to do next. Every breath you take is an opportunity to write something new, something better, something braver. You are not stuck in yesterday's ink. You have the chance, right now, to create a plot twist that changes everything. Life will hand you challenges, heartbreak, and moments of uncertainty, but those do not have to be the conclusion of your story. They can simply be the tension that builds toward an extraordinary turning point. Think about the most inspiring stories you've ever heard. None of them are perfect from start to finish. They are full of trials, detours, and doubts. Yet what makes them powerful is that the main character keeps going, keeps fighting, keeps believing that there is more worth writing. That is exactly the opportunity you have each day to keep turning the page with hope instead of fear, with determination instead of surrender. The danger is in thinking the story is over before it really is. Some people close their own book too soon, not because their time has run out, but because they stop imagining what's possible. They get trapped in a single chapter and replay it over and over in their mind, convincing themselves that it's the whole story. But you are so much more than one moment, one mistake, one victory, or one loss. Your identity is not frozen in one part of your life. It is constantly being shaped, refined, and expanded by the choices you make moving forward. Even if your past chapters are written in pain, you have the ability to start writing with hope. If they are written in failure, you can begin a chapter of resilience. If they are filled with fear, you can write about courage. That is the gift of being the author of your own journey. No matter how dark the plot has been, you can always choose to write light into the next page. You are not at the mercy of what has already been written. You are empowered to decide what comes next. It's important to remember that not all chapters will be dramatic or full of grand victories. Some will be quiet seasons where growth happens in unseen ways. Some will be filled with small steps that may not seem important at the time, but will later reveal themselves as critical turning points. Writing your story is not about rushing to the finish line. It's about being intentional with each sentence, each paragraph, each choice knowing that they all add up to something meaningful. Sometimes you will be tempted to compare your story to someone else's, thinking that theirs is more exciting, more successful, or more inspiring. But comparison will only rob you of your creativity and joy. No two stories are the same, and yours is not meant to match anyone else's. You are the only one who can live your experiences, learn your lessons, and share your perspective. What you write has the potential to inspire others in ways you may never fully see, but it will never happen if you try to mimic another person's path instead of embracing your own. There will also be moments when you feel stuck, unsure of how to move forward or what to write next. In those moments, remember that progress is not always about big leaps. It's about making the next right choice. Even a single sentence can move your story in a better direction. You don't have to know exactly how the next chapter will end. You just have to start writing it. Momentum builds with each word, and clarity comes as you take steps forward. And when you do face setbacks or moments when it feels like your story is falling apart, do not throw away the pen. These moments often become the most transformative parts of your journey when you choose to keep going. Resilience is not about avoiding hardship. It's about refusing to let hardship dictate your ending. Every great comeback starts with a moment where giving up seemed easier, but the decision to push through becomes the very thing that makes the story worth telling. So hold the pen with confidence. Let each day be an act of creation, a choice to write in a way that reflects your deepest values, boldest dreams, and truest self. Your story is not finished, and it never will be until the very last page. Until then, you have infinite opportunities to edit, rewrite, and create something that makes you proud. No matter what the past chapters contain, the greatest ones may still be ahead. Keep writing, because the world has not yet read your best work.